All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Sears. I'm the Lean Coordinator for the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. And I'd like to thank you for joining me on this, the final in our Lean Leadership series. Today, we're going to be talking about strategic planning, and I'm going to apologize again for my voice. I've been struggling all morning to try and find it. So we'll give it the best shot we can. But today, we're going to be talking about something that's really, really important to me and something that I love to talk about, and it's strategic planning. So before we get into what strategic planning is and how we can incorporate it into the work that we do, I want to ask you a question, and that's, does your program have a strategic plan? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw a survey into the chat. And if you can all take a moment to do that, I would really appreciate it. I'm curious to know if you have a strategic plan. So you should see that in the chat. You should also see it as a pop-up. Poly is a great tool if you are in Microsoft Teams for doing those. Get to see live results as they come in. I'm seeing a lot of no's. That is not surprising. I'm also seeing some not sure's, which is also not surprising. Give folks another minute to participate in the survey. Oh, got a balance between yeses and no's. Oh, and that's interesting. I'm seeing two people on the same team that have different answers. All right. So let's see, final results we have here on the survey: 3 yeses, 3 nos, and 2 not sures. So let's talk about strategic planning. So strategic planning is not an operational plan. It's not specifying what it is you're going to do on a day-to-day basis. It's about setting goals and working together to achieve them. So why is the strategic plan important? A strategic plan creates a unifying vision, and when it's inclusive and includes the voices of people above and below, it creates a way for us all to row in the same direction, for us to move forward together and ensure that the work that we're doing is all working in service of our mission. And in the event you do not have a strategic plan, you're not moving forward. You're not moving towards a destination. You're not achieving. And if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind because the world is changing and evolving. And if you're not changing and evolving with it, you're going to be in trouble. If not now, then in 3 or 5 years, or maybe 10 years. In the state, we do a lot of things that have really long time frames. And it's really important to say, this is where we are now, and this is where we want to be. So let's talk a little bit more about strategic plans generally. So strategic planning comes in a lot of shapes and models and designs. The picture you're looking at here is called the driver's model. It's one possible way of looking at strategic planning, but there are several. You might have heard of Hoshink Kanri, or a wide array of strategic planning tools and platforms. What happens if you type strategic planning into Google? But fundamentally, all strategic planning efforts encounter the 4 core ideas to strategic planning. And it's asking, where are we now? Where do we want to be? How do we get there? And how will we monitor progress? So no matter what strategic planning effort you undertake, it involves those 4 steps. And so we're going to take a little bit more in depth about what each of those 4 steps entails and how they all work together. So first step is, where are we now? And we have to gather what's called a baseline. So using numbers, we have to define our existence. And we have to be considerate when we do that, because people are not numbers, and it's important to be empathetic, mindful of feelings, and be inclusive. So not just picking and choosing the parts of the work you do, but fundamentally understanding, what is our current status? We can't work towards something if we don't know where we are now. And when we take a look at what we do and how well we do it, we have to consider things like customers, the people we interact with, staffing, so who we've got to do the work, management, what their priorities and goals are, and wrapping all of that together, we have to come up with metrics to understand what we're doing. And if you need a little bit more inspiration in terms of metrics or KPIs, check out the results-based accountability, which is another training that we did 2 weeks ago. It's available on Microsoft Stream and on YouTube. So once you understand where we are, we can finally take a look at where we're going. So you can't grow in all directions at once. If you could, you would have infinite staffing, right? Because if you're doing work, you probably believe in the importance of the work that you're doing, and so does everyone else who works in your section or unit or division. And all things are not created equal. Some things need more resources than others. Some things reflect an area of growth that you want to move into or do better, and other things reflect areas where you can stand to do less of that are delivering less value. So you want to focus on your core mission. And it's something that as a program manager or as an even higher level leader, you really want to think about what is your core mission and how do you achieve it? And importantly, and this is something that can often get lost, is what are you not going to do? It's very easy to stack more and more and more and say, we're going to get better at this and this and this and this. But people don't have infinite resources. We can't stack up endless amounts of overtime. So what are we going to do less of so we can do more of something else? And that's a hard question, and it's easy to brush past it, but it's something that you need to consider doing any strategic planning. And the most important thing that we can do is identify goals or impose a gap. So it's saying, in the previous question, we asked, where are we now? And we're looking at where do we want to be? That's called a gap. So it is some measure of improvement that you're looking to see. And we have an example here of, say, you want to maximize membership, growth, retention, and involvement. That has to be reflected in metrics so that you can identify how you want to grow. So you might increase membership, increase average meeting attendance, achieve 10% committee involvement. See, these are based around numbers because ultimately that's how you measure your growth towards those goals. But in order to achieve those goals, you have to do something, you have to implement something. So how are you going to get there? So you can start with a SWOT exercise or something else that helps you focus on your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and see how that fits into your overarching mission. So it represents a cycle here that it really resonates with a plan, do, check, act cycle of setting your targets and then implementing your improvement priorities. And then you're checking on them with your breakthrough objectives. So are you meeting the intermediate objectives that you've set? And then ultimately, it's with the idea of meeting those goals 3 to 5 years ahead. I know sometimes it can be scary to think about how things should be 3 to 5 years from now. Like, will I be doing the same thing? Will the work we be doing changing? And that's what's great about these annual breakthrough objectives. It allows us to refocus, adjust, and tweak our priorities because although your priorities might reflect how you want things to be in 5 years, you also have to think about how will the world around us change in those 5 years. As anyone that's lived through the last 2 years will tell you, um, things can change on a dime and unexpectedly and in unexpected ways. And the work that you're doing, your strategic priorities might have to shift along with that work. For example, it would not be surprising if you had a lot of metrics that revolve around how we're doing work remotely. Justin can tell you that a lot of changes had to be implemented in the lean training because of the new frame of reference that we have with this remote working environment. Things like that can happen, and that's why we recheck on our strategic priorities and make sure we're still working towards something that we want to achieve. So we want to know, what does success look like in 1 year? What does success look like in 3 years? What does it look like in 5 years? The length that you set should be ambitious, but also not so far in advance that you never have to worry about achieving them. And you can't forget to implement. You can set a lot of strategic priorities, but it will take an investment in terms of time, in terms of work, in terms of effort in order to achieve them. If it doesn't take work to achieve your goals, then it's not a strategic plan, it's a work plan. All you're doing is maintaining the status quo. And so when you put all this together, you end up with something that looks a little bit like a roadmap, where you have your starting point that you've identified, you have an ending point that you're going to reach, and you have some stops along the way where you're going to check in and make sure you're going to the right place. So once all those pieces are in place, you can take a look at the whole and say, this looks like a way we want to move forward. And it's a communication tool, it's a mechanism for sharing and working together towards a goal. So once we're on the road, we need an odometer to know how fast, know how far we've gone. We need a speedometer to know how fast we're going. We need to measure our progress. And so when we are implementing these changes, when we are operating on our strategic priorities, we're applying change management principles. We're using lean, we're using continuous improvement. We're using a whole bunch of stuff that we spent the last couple months talking about. We're talking about gathering data. You might not have the data you need when you get started, but you have to start measuring it to build that baseline, and so you can check on the progress of your work. Change management and leader standard work are important to helping you reach those goals. Visual management tools are helping you track your progress. You're having your lean meetings to check in on the key factors that we need to move forward. Coaching is always a valuable tool, and results-based accountability is a great way of framing the key performance indicators and the metrics that you track while you're working. So you also need to be tracking those metrics so you're identifying a changing landscape. So we mentioned things like COVID throwing things up in the air, but it can reflect other changes too, like changing customer base, or something else happens, like in state government, a lot of legislative updates can really radically shake up what our priorities are. So you need to be able to adjust. You need to be flexible, but with that overall vision in mind. And you want to continue to track your progress towards your goal. You have to know if you're getting there, and you have to be accountable to those goals. So it doesn't matter if you're falling behind 10% of where you needed to be if no one's going to hold you accountable to that and to get you to work towards that goal. And what's nice about having a strategic plan is that we can all hold each other accountable. It doesn't have to be a boss telling someone underneath them that they need to work harder or do better, but it works better when we're all accountable to one another. We're all working towards goals, and we can all see how well we're moving towards them. That's where dashboards and things like that become really valuable, because it allows us all to work together. So we have a strategic plan, but how does that strategic plan work in the overall organization? That's what we want to talk about with Catchball. So you can, at the program level or at the section level, have a strategic plan. You should also have a strategic plan at the division level, at the department level. At every level, you might have multiple strategic plans. And it's through Catchball that we can orient these all together, and so that we're all rowing in the same direction. So starting at the top of the organization, you might have a strategic plan and a set of objectives. Those objectives you want to be able to communicate down so that the individual division work that's going on, so that the sections that are working under those divisions, and so that the frontline staff, either through performance evaluation, all of those targets and objectives fit together in a way that makes sense, because frontline staff are doing things, but those things should ultimately feed all the way up to department objectives, to division objectives, to section level objectives. And in order to get there, it takes negotiation and alignment, not just down, but up as well. So you have to have a level of communication that communicates what is needed and how to get there. It's tough to do right. And it's not something you see all that often, but it's through this catchball process that we open up the lines of communication, that we work together on developing our strategic priorities, and we get the buy-in to do it. Because a strategic priority that comes from high up in the organization with no communication up or down doesn't tend to get executed on, especially if you're missing a strategic plan somewhere in the mid levels, or in a lot of cases In government, you can have a missing strategic plan at the upper level. So you might have a low-level strategic plan, but how does it fit into the mission? If you can't answer that question, that's a good sign that you probably don't have a higher level strategic plan that you're working towards. Or you might have a strategic plan that's not actually a strategic plan. It's just a strategic plan that says, we do the work that we do, and we keep doing that work, and we do it well. That's not a strategic plan because it doesn't reflect change, improvement, or growth. And that's the key facet that a strategic plan needs in order to move you forward, to get you rowing in the same direction, because you don't need to row at that point, right? You're just doing your own thing. We're in a boat just spinning around because everybody's rowing their own way, doing their own thing. And when it all works, it's a beautiful thing because your mission fits in with what's going on at the section level, which fits into what's going on at the division level, which fits into what's going on at the department level. And you can feel good about the work that you're doing because you know it fits into that overall model. And that only happens through the catchball process, communicating objectives down and negotiating and aligning up. It requires effective communication, and it's vitally important. So in a lot of these past trainings, we've focused a lot on me telling you about a bunch of cool stuff, and you come away from it going, huh, we talked about some pretty cool stuff. And maybe I'll apply some of that to the work that I do, or maybe I'll find ways to apply it. But today, I want you to come out of it with a little bit more. So we put a lot of work in over the last several months through these lean leadership trainings. I want to work together on an exercise with you. And today, we're going to develop a vision. So I want all of you to take a moment, close your eyes. I want you to imagine 5 years from now, you're at a conference to receive an award on behalf of your team. And I want to know what that award is for and what are things like for that team. So take a minute to think about it. And when you've got something in mind, I want you to go ahead and raise your hand if you're willing to and share what it's for. So what's the award for and what are things like for that team? So imagine you're at an interview and someone says, where do you see yourself in 5 years? That's kind of what this vision looks like. And, you know, it can be a vision for your division or section. It can be a vision for you personally, but a good vision is the core foundation of every strategic plan. And I want to know what yours is. So take a couple minutes and think about it, and then raise your hand when you've got something to share. And if none of you has anything, I'm going to put Justin on the spot and make him tell me.
For my
All right,
team
Justin.
for my team of one, John.
Well, I mean, right now you're the acting chief improvement officer, right?
That is a true story.
So 5 years from now, you're at a conference receiving an award on behalf of your team. What's the award for, and what are things like for that team? Share with us your vision.
Wow. Okay. Vision for my team. Let's see here. So I think we will have won an award for a couple things. One would be for probably some process improvement work and getting folks to a point where they feel like their processes are actually meeting their needs. And we've moved people off of things like legacy systems to more modern technologies and capabilities. I think there would be a component there that has to do with people skills, and that we've built a team with a group of people that are highly capable and highly knowledgeable and are also extremely engaged in the work that they do. If I think about some of the other work that we do, there'd be some stuff there around management supervision, and our team would have supported a number of different programs throughout the organization to better monitor and track their processes and to use that data to solve problems.
That's awesome, Justin. So what Justin did there, you can almost see it, right? And for each element that he discussed, those can translate into objectives, and those objectives turn into goals, with key metrics assigned to them and set up so that he can start working towards that. And that's what I want for all of you, is to workshop the vision you have with your team, because it's not about one individual's perspective. It's about, how does everyone think about that? And does Justin's vision align with everyone else he's working with? And that may take some give and take, but at the end of it, you have a vision that everyone feels like they can work towards. Those visions become objectives and then goals. And he can make that vision a reality. It may take a lot of work, and I'd love to see him get that award too. Does anyone else have a vision that they want to share with us? If you don't want to, if you want to make me say it in my cool new voice, okay, go ahead, Jenna.
Um, I don't know if this is right, but I would say some goals for the program for me would be that funding programs are responsive to need and are cost effective. They're developed through a publicly inclusive process, and they address clean water inequities.
Okay, I mean, that's a great example of what things are like for that team. What award did you win?
Oh, coolest person on the team, obviously, right, Katie and Helen? No, I don't know. I don't know what the word would be.
A lot of times, teams that have really effective strategic plans and work together have a strong sense of camaraderie, and they're really cool teams to work with, because it feels like everyone has their stuff together in a way that in other teams it may not be the case. And it doesn't necessarily reflect that the individuals in that team are unusually special. It just may be that they're all working towards the same goal, that they've all got each other's backs, and they all see how one another fits into that vision. And that can really generate a sense of team and unity that can really benefit a team in its success. So whether or not you were able to close your eyes and think of your award or think of your team, I encourage you to take some time after we're done here to go through that, and also workshop a vision, set objectives, and you can start strategic planning right now. Start with that vision and go from there. So that's all I had for today. I want to leave some time for questions. So feel free to raise those hands, throw things in chat. I would appreciate it if you wanted to raise your hand and talk, because I might be reaching the end of my voice's capabilities. It can also be a question on anything that we've talked about in the Lean Leadership series. So we're at the end of the series. If there are things that you want training on in the future, you can always feel free to email me at john.sears@vermont.gov. I touch on all Lean adjacent topics. This Lean Leadership series has been great. It's been a great opportunity to share with you. I'm always looking for knowing what kinds of things that you folks want to see. Okay, quiet bunch today. All right. If that's it for everyone else, I want to thank you all for your time. For those of you that have stuck with me through all of these trainings, all 8 of them, congratulations, you've reached the end. If you've missed a couple, they're all available on Microsoft Stream if you're a State of Vermont employee. They're also available on YouTube. I want to thank you all for this opportunity. And if you've got any questions following the work, you're always free to email me or message me on Teams. And it's been a pleasure to be here for you. So thank you all so much, and have a great day.
Thank you.
I like the applause. All right. You folks have a great day. And I'll see you around.